In 2018, an international team of geneticists published one of the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on the ancestry of people living across the Arabian Peninsula. Among the researchers was geneticist Mark Haber and a team specializing in population genetics. Their goal seemed simple: trace the genetic history of Arabia Anime, where its people came from. Understand how thousands of years of migration shaped the region. At first, nobody expected a mystery. DNA studies had already transformed our understanding of Europe, Africa, and Asia. Arabia was simply the next chapter, or so it seemed, but when the data arrived, something unexpected appeared. A pattern, then another, and another. The deeper scientists looked, the stranger the picture became, because hidden inside the DNA of modern Saudis was evidence of an ancient story stretching far beyond the borders of Saudi Arabia, a story older than kingdoms, older than empires, older than written language itself. To understand why this discovery mattered, we now had to travel back in time, not hundreds of years, not thousands, tens of thousands, but tens of thousands, back to a world that no longer exists. A world where Arabia looked very different. Today, people imagine Arabia as endless desert, an ocean of sand, a harsh landscape where survival is difficult. But ancient Arabia was not always like this. There were periods when the peninsula was greener, wetter, alive with rivers and lakes. Grasslands stretched across regions now covered by desert. Animals roamed places that are barren today. Ancient hunters followed them. Families settled near water. Children grew up beside lakes that have long since vanished. For thousands of years, Arabia was not a dead end. It was a gateway. A bridge between continents. To the west stood Africa. To the north, the Levant. To the east, Asia. Every major human migration moving between these regions faced the same obstacle: Arabia. Or perhaps it wasn't an obstacle at all. Perhaps it was a highway. This idea changed everything. For decades, scientists believed that most ancient humans leaving Africa traveled through specific northern routes. The Arabian Peninsula received relatively little attention, but then archaeological discoveries began appearing: stone tools, ancient campsites, human traces buried beneath layers of sand. Each discovery raised new questions. How many people passed through Arabia? How long did they stay? Did they leave descendants behind? Or did they disappear? At first, nobody had clear answers. Then genetics entered the investigation. DNA is unlike written history. A manuscript can be burned, a monument can collapse, an empire can vanish. DNA remembers. Every generation passes fragments of the past to the next. Tiny biological records survive where entire civilizations disappear. Scientists began examining genetic markers shared among populations across Saudi Arabia. The results revealed something remarkable. Many Saudi lineages were deeply ancient, far older than expected. Some trace back to populations connected to the earliest migrations of modern humans outside Africa. Others showed links to neighboring regions: the Levant, Mesopotamia, East Africa, Persia. The genetic picture wasn't simple. It was layered, like an archaeological site buried beneath thousands of years of history. Each layer told a different story. Each story revealed another migration, another encounter, another forgotten chapter. This is where the story gets strange. The evidence suggested that Arabia had not merely received migrants. It had helped shape the movement of humanity itself. For generations, scholars viewed Arabia as a region influenced by larger civilizations around it: Egypt, Mesopotamia, Persia, Rome. But DNA hinted at something different, something older, something deeper. What if Arabia wasn't standing at the edge of history? What if it stood near the center? Scientists began comparing Saudi DNA with ancient genetic samples recovered from archaeological sites. The results revealed connections stretching across enormous distances, thousands of miles, thousands of years. Some genetic signatures suggested interactions with populations from the Levant. Others pointed toward ancient African connections, not recent history, Ancient history. Ancient history. Prehistoric history, the kind that predates written records, the kind that survives only in bones and genes. Researchers found evidence that populations within Arabia had experienced multiple waves of ancestry over time. Different groups arrived, some settled, some mixed with existing populations. Others disappeared entirely, yet traces remained, hidden DNA waiting to be discovered. Every answer created new questions. Who were these people? Why did they come? What happened to them? And perhaps most importantly, what did Arabia look like when they arrived? Ancient climate records provided another clue. Thousands of years ago, environmental conditions shifted dramatically. Wet periods transformed large parts of Arabia, lakes appeared, vegetation spread, wildlife flourished, human populations expanded into regions that would later become nearly uninhabitable. Then conditions changed again. The climate dried, lakes disappeared, grasslands became desert. Communities were forced to move. Some traveled north, others south, many vanished from history. But their genetic signatures remained locked inside future generations. Scientists slowly assembled the puzzle, piece by piece, migration after migration. Century after century, the image became clearer. Yet one mystery refused to disappear. Among several Saudi populations, researchers discovered genetic patterns that appeared surprisingly ancient, much older than many expected. These weren't simply traces from recent historical migrations. They pointed toward deep ancestry, very deep ancestry, lineages surviving through immense stretches of time, surviving droughts, wars, collapsing civilizations, and dramatic environmental change. The implication was extraordinary. Some genetic threads present in modern Saudi populations may preserve echoes of people who lived in Arabia thousands of years before the rise of famous kingdoms, thousands of years before the pyramids, thousands of years before the first cities. No one expected what came next. As researchers expanded their studies, another pattern emerged. Saudi populations were neither genetically isolated nor genetically uniform. Different regions revealed different histories, different mixtures, different ancestral influences. The desert had hidden diversity. Enormous diversity. This challenged popular assumptions. Many people imagine ancestry as a straight line, one people, one origin, one story. Reality is rarely that simple. Human history is movement. Migration, adaptation, survival, and Saudi Arabia stood at the crossroads of all three. The more scientists learned, the more they realized that the Arabian Peninsula had witnessed countless human journeys. Travelers crossing deserts, families seeking water, merchants following trade routes, nomadic groups searching for opportunity. Every movement left traces, invisible traces, genetic traces. And those traces remained hidden until modern science uncovered them. What they found shocked everyone, because the story emerging from Saudi DNA wasn't a story of isolation. It was a story of connection. A story linking continents, a story linking ancient worlds, a story linking forgotten people to millions living today. But then something changed. Researchers began focusing on one particular question. A question that would push the investigation even deeper. If Arabia played such a crucial role in ancient human history, could some of the oldest surviving genetic lineages outside Africa still be found there? The possibility seemed almost unbelievable, yet evidence continued to accumulate. New studies, new samples, new discoveries. Each one pointed toward the same conclusion. The sands of Arabia were hiding a far older story than anyone had imagined. And the next discovery would make that story impossible to ignore, because buried inside the genetic record was a clue. A clue that could reshape our understanding of how ancient humans spread across the world. A clue that had remained hidden for tens of thousands of years. And that clue would lead scientists directly into one of the greatest mysteries of human origins. The possibility seemed almost unbelievable, yet the evidence refused to go away. Study after study pointed toward the same conclusion. Arabia was not a side road in human history, it was one of the main roads, perhaps one of the oldest. Scientists began comparing genetic evidence with archaeological discoveries scattered across the peninsula. Stone tools emerged from places where nobody expected them. Ancient lake beds appeared beneath deserts. Human traces surfaced in regions that now seemed impossible to inhabit. Every discovery told the same story. The Arabia of the distant past was not the Arabia we know today. There were times when rain transformed the landscape. Grasslands spread across the peninsula. Animals migrated through regions now buried beneath sand. Humans followed them. Where animals moved, people moved. Where water existed, life flourished. For thousands of years, Arabia became a living corridor connecting continents. Then the climate shifted, the green world vanished, lakes dried, rivers disappeared. The desert returned, communities faced a choice: adapt, move, or disappear. Many moved, and wherever they went, they carried their DNA with them. This is where the story gets strange. Some genetic signatures found among modern Saudis appeared linked to populations that existed before many of the world's earliest civilizations. Not Egypt, not Babylon, not Greece. Older, much older. Researchers began noticing that certain Arabian lineages occupied important positions on humanity's genetic family tree. These lineages seem to preserve traces of ancient migrations that occurred shortly after modern humans began leaving Africa. That observation raised a disturbing question. What if Arabia had preserved evidence of human journeys that had vanished elsewhere? What if some of humanity's oldest surviving genetic stories were hidden in plain sight? No one expected what came next. As genetic databases expanded, scientists gained access to more ancient DNA samples recovered from archaeological sites across the Middle East. For the first time, they could compare living populations with people who had died thousands of years ago. The results created a much clearer picture. But clarity brought new mysteries. Some ancient populations shared surprising connections with people living in Arabia today. Others did not. Some migrations left enormous genetic footprints. Others seemed to disappear almost completely. Why? What determined which populations survived? What caused others to vanish? Researchers followed the evidence deeper. Every answer led backward through time. Every discovery pushed the story further into prehistory. Eventually, scientists arrived at one unavoidable conclusion. Modern Saudi populations were not descendants of a single ancient group. They were the product of countless waves of human history, migration after migration, generation after generation, thousands of years of movement layered upon one another. The desert had preserved a genetic archive, and scientists had only begun reading it. At first, the mystery appeared simple. Scientists wanted to understand where modern Saudis came from. Instead, they uncovered a story stretching across continents, a story reaching back tens of thousands of years. The deeper they investigated, the more complicated everything became. Now the focus shifted. No longer toward ancient tools, no longer toward buried lakes, toward DNA itself, the evidence hidden inside every cell. Now the investigation would go deeper. Researchers analyzed genetic markers inherited through both maternal and paternal lines. These markers act like historical breadcrumbs. They allow scientists to trace ancestry far into the past. Patterns began emerging. Certain paternal lineages appeared throughout Arabia at unusually high frequencies. Some were deeply connected to ancient populations of the Near East. Others reflected movements that occurred long before written records existed. The same pattern appeared again and again. Kanaksh movement exteng, not isolation. For centuries, Arabia sat between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Trade routes crossed it. Nomadic migrations crossed it. Empires crossed it. The DNA showed the consequences. People arrived, people mixed, people left, but traces remained. Researchers compared Saudi populations with neighboring groups. The results showed strong connections across the broader Middle East. This was expected. But there was another layer, an older layer, a deeper layer, evidence suggesting that Arabian populations preserved ancestry linked to some of the earliest human expansions beyond Africa. What they found shocked everyone. Because the findings challenged a popular assumption, many people imagined ancient Arabia as merely a passageway, a place humans crossed on their way elsewhere. The genetic evidence suggested something different. Many groups did not simply pass through, they stayed, they adapted, they survived for thousands of years, and their descendants still live there today. But then something changed. Ancient DNA studies began revolutionizing the field. Instead of studying only living populations, scientists could now examine the genetic makeup of people who lived thousands of years ago. Ancient skeletons became time machines. Each sample opened a window into the past. Researchers compared these ancient genomes with modern Saudi populations. The similarities were impossible to ignore. The Arabian Peninsula contained deep genetic continuity, not perfect continuity, not an unchanged population. Human history never works that way, but enough continuity to reveal a remarkable truth. Ancient Arabian populations had not disappeared. Parts of their genetic legacy survived, generation after generation, across droughts, across invasions, across empires, across millennia. This discovery transformed the entire investigation. The question was no longer where Saudis came from. The question became how many ancient populations contributed to their ancestry. The answer was astonishing. There wasn't one source. There were many ancient Arabian hunter-gatherers, populations linked to the Levant, groups connected to Mesopotamia, historical migrations from surrounding regions, trade connections with Africa, thousands of years of interaction, thousands of years of movement, thousands of years of human stories, and every one of those stories left fingerprints inside DNA. This is where the story gets strange. The farther scientists looked into the past, the harder it became to draw simple boundaries. Modern ideas about ethnicity and nationality began to lose meaning. Ancient humans did not carry passports. They followed water, climate, food, opportunity, survival. The world was constantly moving, and Arabia stood at the center of many of those movements. The big reveal was not a shocking replacement of history. It was something far more powerful. History itself became larger. The genetic origin of modern Saudis was not one tribe, not one migration, not one ancient people. It was the accumulated result of countless human journeys. Some journeys began in Arabia. Others arrived there. Some ended there. Others continued beyond it. Yet, together they created the populations living in the kingdom today. No one expected what came next, because the implications reached far beyond Saudi Arabia. The findings changed how scientists viewed the entire region. For years, Arabia had been treated as a bridge between civilizations. The genetic evidence suggested it was also a center of civilization's deeper human story, a place where ancient lineages survived, a place where human migrations converged, a place where pieces of humanity's earliest chapters remained preserved, and that changed everything. For many people, ancestry feels personal, it feels permanent, a direct line connecting present to past. The reality revealed by genetics is both simpler and more profound. Human history is shared. Every population carries traces of countless ancestors, some known, most forgotten. The people living in Saudi Arabia today carry evidence of journeys spanning immense distances and unimaginable periods of time. Their DNA contains echoes of ancient survivors, ancient travelers, ancient families who crossed landscapes that no longer exist. People who never imagined their descendants would one day study their genetic legacy. Yet here we are, thousands of years later, reading the story they left behind, not on stone, not on paper, but within ourselves. And perhaps that is the most remarkable discovery of all. The investigation began with a simple question. Where did modern Saudis come from? The answer turned out to be much bigger. They came from Arabia. But they also came from the countless human journeys that shaped Arabia, from migrations, from encounters. From adaptation, from survival, from history itself, the desert kept those secrets for thousands of years. Then science uncovered them, one genetic marker at a time, one discovery at a time, one forgotten ancestor at a time. Yet even now, the story remains unfinished. New DNA studies continue, new archaeological sites emerge, new evidence appears every year. Somewhere beneath the sands of Arabia, there may still be ancient remains waiting to be discovered, waiting to reveal another chapter, another migration, another forgotten people, another piece of humanity's story. And that question has never been fully answered. How much of our past still lies hidden beneath the desert? The kingdoms changed, the empires disappeared, the trade routes faded, the people endured. And somewhere, right now, beneath an empty stretch of Arabian sand, the next piece of the story waits to be found.